2 times a week. But some of the things I want to talk about is a couple of things that I posted recently in that newsletter. And the first, I think that resonated with a lot of people is if you are not paying attention to the payment terms that you're offering, you're essentially becoming like this zero interest bank for your clients, for your customers. And I've had this come up with multiple clients where they give their customers 30, 60, even sometimes 90-day payment terms when it destroys your own cash flow. And here's a simple kind of way to think about it. If you allow somebody to pay you back in 90 days for a service that you've already provided, you have to front that money for 90 days, the salary, the cost of materials, if you have, material costs, the cost of your own time, right? And not only that, if you now have to go out and get a loan or some sort of, and I've seen it happen as well, some people fall into another thing we're going to talk about a little later, right? You fall into these zero interest, kind of offers that land into your mailbox just when you think you need it. And what happens is now your customers get 90 days to pay you, but you're left holding the cash bill, right? You're left with that hole in your cash flow. So ultimately, when you give them these 90 days or 60-day terms, you are now giving them a 0% interest loan. And what that means is now you're actually discounting your services, right? Because essentially there's baked in interest now in your service. And so what you need to do is, if you are currently giving these 30, 60, 90-day invoicing terms to your clients, what you need to focus on first is, one, understand how can you communicate to them, right, that you're changing your policy. Going into a new year is a great way to look at that. First, you can send them an email notifications, right? Send them an email, just update, say, hey, by the way, effective, and I wouldn't do it January 1st because it's too close. You want to give at least a 30, 45-day notice, right, on invoicing. Go and send an email, especially if you're like one-on-one clients. Effective February 1st, we're changing our invoicing, and all of our invoicing are going to be due 30 days out. And implement a late charge. So many people are hesitant on a late charge. Well, if you don't provide these sort of fees, you're training your customers how to react to your business. You're training your customers to not pay you on a timely basis. So you have to implement these. And so if you don't have these implemented, again, this could be in the same notification, but implement some sort of fee, whether it's 5% or $25, whatever's great, or whatever it ends up being. But send that notification out. Effective February 1st, March 1st, whatever you feel you want to do. We're changing our invoicing to a maximum 30 days. And if it's not paid in 30 days from the due date, from the invoice date, there's going to be a late charge. Now, some of your clients are probably going to push back, especially the ones that are 90 days, but you have to just let them know, like, that's okay. Like, if you want longer terms, we're going to add a little bit of a premium on that, right? Add a little bit of additional, fee, right, for financing, et cetera, whatever it ends up being. You're more than happy to give them that term, but you're going to add a little bit of financing that covers your cost for carrying that money. So, Fred, welcome, sir. And then with that in mind, before we kind of continue on with this, if anybody's watching and you have any questions, maybe you're running a business and you really are in this situation, you don't know how to change it, drop a question down below. We're more than happy to answer them, live on the show, or if you are watching a replay right now and you have a question on this, drop it down, and we're checking our comments at all times. So again, we have 20 years, for myself, over 20 years in corporate finance, entrepreneurship, and we're here helping you, the business owner, kind of overcome some of these situations. For example, let's say a credit card. So let's say you had credit card balances of $100,000 at the end of 2024. And now you're looking at your profit and loss and you're like, man, I had a lot of income this year. But you're like, where's the money in the bank? Like, I don't feel like I have any money in the bank. I was really profitable. Now you look at your balance sheet, which is why you have to look at both of these statements together. You look at your balance sheet and you realize, okay, I had $100,000 in a credit card balance last year, and now it's $80,000 this year. So you paid off $20,000 of expenses that were the prior year expenses. So the $20,000 of your profit right then gone. So hi there, Cheerio. Hope I said your name right, ma'am, or ma'am. So appreciate you kind of being here. If you have any questions, if you're a business owner or anything like that, feel free to share them down below. Love it. But let's, in this example, right, you pay down $20,000 of credit card. So yeah, you may have $70,000 of profit, but $20,000 of that was used to pay down your credit card balance. Now, let's say you had a loan as well, right? That new truck you bought in the prior year. You had a loan of $100,000 on that. Let's say it's big, 2,500. Okay, and you paid out $20,000 of payments, right? So maybe, for example, let's say your payment is $2,000 a month on this truck. I know it's just example purposes, right? $2,000 a month, $24,000 total payments, right? You may be thinking, well, why isn't $24,000 showing up on my P&L? Well, because the principal part of those payments, right, that reduces the principal balance of your loan. The only part of loan payments that you get to claim as a business owner on your P&L is your interest. So let's say of those 24,000, especially at the beginning of your payments, if it's the first year, you probably have a good chunk of that. It's going to be interest, but the majority of that's going to pay off. So for that simplicity purposes, let's say $8,000 went to interest and the other, $16,000 went to pay down your loan. So you were going to see $8,000 on your P&L, but that $16,000, it's not going to show up. It's out of your bank, but it's not going to show up on your P&L. So Jeriel, awesome, man. Appreciate it. Love all you guys that are subscribers. And if you anything in this video you have questions on, share it. Otherwise, if you want to share the video, if you are friends or your network has a lot of business owners in it, would love it if you can kind of help us out and improve the awareness. So for those of you that know too, we have a goal by the end of 2028 to have an impact on at least 1,000 businesses through this podcast, through our operations at Giant Business Solutions, or in general, just in conversations and providing insight and advice that turned into a large impact for business owners. So in this example, so going back to our example here on P&L versus cash flow, there's $36,000 now that is out of your bank, but is not shown up as an expense. So you had $70,000 in income, and over half of that's gone down, right, to pay off a credit card or to pay down principal. So you can kind of see how you have to look at both of those kind of statements. And there's a statement that as well is called a cash flow statement. It tells you how your money, how the cash in your business is being spent, not necessarily the profitability of the business, but how your cash is being spent. And if you have a bookkeeper or you have an accountant and they're not providing you those three statements, your balance sheet, your P&L, and a cash flow statement, you need to start asking them for it. And if they refuse, it's probably a good time to look for a new accountant, look for a new bookkeeper, because those are the three statements in general, as a starter, as a basic, right, that is going to actually give you the insights that you need to make the best financial decisions for your business. And in the P&L, there's two P&Ls I give my clients. One, right, is the current month that we just closed, or current quarter, depending on the frequency at which we're providing financial statements. But then I also give them at least a 13-month, essentially a 13-month P&L. And what that allows us to do is, one, look at trending, right? Are there months when expenses typically go up and down? It also allows us to identify with the business owner if there's any anomalies, or there's any errors, right? Or an invoice that came in that was above expectation that the business owner didn't know because it just came out of their account. We're able to review these things by looking at that 13-month P&L. So essentially, our financial package for our clients looks like a balance sheet, a current month, just for the month profit and loss, or for the quarter, depending on how we're closing, a 13-month P&L that breaks down by month all the activities that we can review with our client as well, and then a cash flow statement where we talk through and we review the cash flow of the business and how things have gone. And then for those that are part of the Profit First implementation, or they're operating in Profit First, we help them understand what their allocations are and everything. And so we won't get into Profit First here or cash management and cash flow right now. We'll get into that into another episode or another topic. But essentially, we'll help them understand what their allocations are, maybe where they deviated, maybe they took money out that they shouldn't, and we hold them accountable in that aspect as well. So those are the main things that we do for our clients. And now all of that helps reduce the stress time over time for those individuals, those business owners. And if you have an accountant or bookkeeper, talk with them, right? You should be reaching out to them. And if they're not reaching out to you proactively as well, might be time to look for a new one. And if you're a bookkeeper and you're an accountant and you're watching this and you're not doing those things and you're not reaching out to your clients or you're not giving them a full financial insights on their business, shame on you, but you can change it, right? You can start doing those things now, moving forward into the new year, because business owners need your support. If you're a bookkeeper and accountant, there's plenty of people out there. I'm not saying that I have to service everybody. That's not the goal, right? There's plenty of businesses out there that all of the bookkeepers, all the accountants can service if you need to.
For the new year.
Right.
So that's pretty much what we're working on.
That's interesting. And so like this is a good kind of topic. I guess we could start quickly with like a profit first or reserve accounts, right? And kind of figure out
Mm.
how you focus on it. Because this is, we've mentioned drip accounts on the income side, but this is an expense like reserve account that you guys do you build essentially every month. Are you depositing into that 13-month account so that you know that the money's there and that you're not essentially stressing over it? You got to pay it, but you're not stressing over it at that point.
Yeah, look, typically that's what I'd love to say I do, because that's just such a great idea and it's a very responsible thing to do. Next year, that is my intent. But
Okay.
typically what happened is this year I started about 5 months ago putting into that account. So we put an account aside and started dropping funding in there 5 months ago, ready for this. Just what we could afford at the time each month. And we've had a couple of really good bumper months, which has been great, with some projects that fell that we weren't expecting to fall. They're unexpected. And, it's been great. So it really helped out as well.
But I feel like, and so if you're listening to this, and you probably can relate, right, to Dwarn's situation here, is that you have to pay this expense, whether it's tax, whether it's a year end expense, or whatever it ends up being, wherever you are. But you're like, I'll just get to it, or maybe I'll pay it. And you had a couple things come in this year, whether it was a project or whether it was like an influx of money where you're like, oh, great, I have the money. But you can't rely on that, right? And so, as Ron mentioned, he's going to develop, and starting January, any one of his revenue that comes in related to his employees, he's going to put it aside. And that's exactly what like a cash management system is, whether it's profit first or whether it's your own that you develop for yourself. Ultimately, you have to decide where is everything, right? What needs to get paid? And if you're not able to put that money aside, it's because you're probably not pricing your services appropriately enough, right? Because that's part of your cost. And if you don't have the money in your income, then you haven't priced it correctly. And so it's something that you need to review and kind of maybe increase, which is another discussion we're going to have in this conversation today too.
That's very true, Dave. Like one of the things that we've talked about previously this year was I now run a spreadsheet which actually has this wonderful calculation which takes into consideration every contribution required by law for us to make on an employee based on the amount that we pay them,
Right.
as their base salary. And on top of that, we factored in their taxable income, we factored in 13th month amortized over 12 months, all that sort of thing. And what that does is allow me to see what I have to bill out to a client, or the maximum I can bill out to a client, while maintaining the minimum profit margin I require to basically keep the doors open and pay the administration team and myself and rent and internet times three and all that other wonderful stuff that goes on.
And what's funny is that
So
people they buy stuff from McDonald's all the time. They buy stuff from Walmart all the time. They change your prices like quarterly
yeah,
or yearly. Like what used to be 89 cents is now $1.50, and nobody's complained. So it's almost doubled in price, but nobody complains. They don't notify you. They just make the change. And so when it comes to pricing, you just have to consider like what type of service do I provide? If it's more personal, you want to actually do a call, right? You don't want to just send an email or just put a banner on your website. And how much notice do you give? And these are the things that when price increases fall flat, it's probably because you missed one of those aspects.
You know what's interesting about that is honesty is really well received a lot of the time when you do those calls too. So think about the things that increase during the year. You need staff retention, so you might have had to increase salaries.
Mhm.
You might have that means increased contributions. You might have introduced a HMO plan for your team. These are things to keep your staff happy, keep them healthy, keep them available to do the job, which supports your customer base. You might have changed premise, so therefore your rent went up because you've had to change premise. You might have done a new fit out to support a client. You may have got a new server to supply services to your clients. You may have introduced new software into your mix to provide better services to your customer base. You could have put extra team members on in the background to help deliver better services or faster response times. If you think about the things you've done for the reasons you've done it, then explain those. A lot of the times you can say, hey, Dave, so this last 12 months, it's been great growing with you. We've actually put on 3 new staff and we've actually changed office. And as part of that, we've also upgraded our reporting software. So, with all of these internal changes, I'm sure you've seen that we've been able to deliver XYZ for you, and we've been doing it, in this time. We'd like to talk to you about the why we're increasing some of our rates, and it's to help offset some of the costs of the business for these services that we're now offering.
So I'm going to stop you there for a second. I would
Yeah,
not say that, and this is why. I, as a customer, don't care about your premise. I don't or your real estate, right? I don't care about your number of staff to give me my outcome. What needs to be focused in that message is what are the outcomes, right? What are the actual things that they're getting for that increased price, right? So, hey, we added on 3 new staff. This has allowed us to reduce wait times by 10%, right? So we're going to guarantee now that you're going to see results quicker with this new change. Not, hey, I'm raising your price because I
well,
need to bring
I
on new
think
staff.
I think
So
what you need to do is you need to say, you know, rather than you will see, you would have noticed changes through the year where we have reduced wait times, we have improved things
right.
like that.
That's the
Back it up.
value. And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
to show them the value, not
it needs to be
perceived
the
future value necessarily, but value that you can show based on things you've done. If you've been absorbing some of these costs, if you're not
well,
absorbing the cost and you're putting new costs in and you need to recover those, then I guess you need to show perceived value though too.
even if they've seen the value, right? So the big thing that you have to focus on is like, yeah, that's all in the past. But you have to one point it out because if you don't point it out, the customer, your client is going to just assume that that's part of norm, right? But if you do point it out, hey, this is what we've done throughout the year. We've been able to bring on new staff to be more efficient, to get you better results, to give you better reporting. And now that wasn't part of your original package, but with changes, we're changing our packaging. And this is what it's going to include now, which is the difference, the added value, right? In your package because of that. And moving forward, this is what you're going to see with this change. Now, you can grandfather them in and say, look, you can go back to the old package and you're not going to get the added service, right? And take it away from them if they don't want to change. Great. Or if they do want to change, they're going to pay the increased price because of all those added value. And so you don't necessarily have to go into like the detail, right? Your property. And so this is the biggest thing that I ran into. And I'll give you an example of this. I had, back when I was in my tax office back in the day, I had a couple of, offices of a franchise. I had owned a used Jaguar, right? And I got it wrapped with the company. And I actually had a guy come in and say, I'm not going to pay you to pay for that Jaguar out there. Right. So you have to understand that like people look at like what you drive or like you mentioned your new premises. Like if you just built it in your real estate or building, right? If you just built this brand new building and you could tell people, hey, I need to increase your price because I just bought this brand new building and I need to pay for it. You're going to rub them the wrong way and they are not going to continue to do business with you. But if you say, hey, we bought a new building, we moved into a new premise because we're bringing on new staff to help serve you better, that's what you need to focus on, not that they need to pay for the building. So that was my only thing that I
No, of
wanted to
course.
kind of put a
Addition
caveat
abruptly.
there.
Well, Dave, this is great because now I know the conversation I need to have with you after this.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Because I get it. Yeah. Another example of this one, right? So, and then we'll kind of move on from the pricing, but it just happened. Well, I think it was like what yesterday. I think it was no, it might have been the day before. But we use StreamYard to stream this podcast. Out of the blue, I get an email from StreamYard that says, "Hey, by the way, we did a AI or we did a automated analysis of your account, and we've determined that we feel that you're a business account. So starting in January, we're going to renew your membership at $299 a month, and which is an increase from the $45 a month that you're paying right now." And I was like, "Whoa, what?" I mean, that's a 5x increase from what determination? And
Concept of one. So doing four
but
sounds
you
like a lot.
can test the messaging, you know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing. Like, you
Yes.
could, have different headlines. Maybe it's on a banner, right? That just or what's it, carousel, right? You can have your carousel. You could put different things in there to test different messaging and test different offers. And that's one thing I do say is you got to have on your website. You have to have some sort of like lead magnet or attention grabbing offer right in that first kind of screen. So if you look at your website, this is one of the most important things for you to do when you have to pay attention as your potential client, right? Your ideal prospect. So log onto your website, and in that first web screen, right in your browser, that's the main attention. If you don't have what you want to potentially get from your prospect and give them some sort of value in that rectangle, you're losing them, because essentially once they look at that, you have 10 seconds. And a lot of times they won't even scroll down. They'll look at that and they'll determine if it's something that meets their needs, or they'll move on. So you as a business owner, or you as, if you're helping design, there should be some sort of educational, right, impactful headline request value that you're giving them in that first landing site. And it's not, you can think landing page, but nothing that below matters unless that first rectangle hits them, right?
Yeah.
And with that, make sure it actually speaks to your ideal client profile, not what you think they want, but what you actually like have heard that they need, or that's going to give them value to, maybe it's a first step of your service or your support, but it gets them started, gets them moving. That's the biggest piece.
Absolutely. And avoid these bullshit nonsense phrases that mean nothing. Like these ones that come out with, "We are going to change the world." Well, that's great. How are you going to do that? And does that mean anything to the person who's reading? If you're an accountant, what's that going to do with your business? If you're a plumber, okay, that's not you're going to change the world. How? At the end of the day, all I care about, if I'm looking for a plumber, I want to know I'm reliable, on time, and I can unblock your toilet, or I can, unblock your drains, or whatever your problem is right then and there. So come up with something that's relevant. The amount of times that I go to a website, so I got one right up in front of me at the moment. We got this new client December last year. They're a building company, and I'm looking up at one of my screens here, and it says, "Building the future, restoring the past." And I asked him, I said, "What does that mean to you?" He goes, "I don't know. It's just some shit I put up there." That was his exact words. He's a tradie, right? He's a contractor. And I said, "Well, building the future, yeah, okay. Restoring the past. How much renovation work do you do?" "Oh, I hate renovation work. We don't do it." "So how are you restoring the past?" "Oh, we don't." I said, "So it kind of doesn't make any sense." And the second part of it is exactly. And then if you go down a little bit further, the second part of what he talks about is, "We are a customer-driven group providing quality projects at cost-efficient prices with our clients' timeframes." I'm like, that is what should have been up top. That is more relevant.
Right.
Although I think you can improve on that even. But if we're working on just content on your website, that's more impactful to me because it tells me more about what you do. Or right under that, he's got specializing in residential, commercial, project management, design, and construction. Even better. I know exactly what you do. That's what I want to know right there. Then I want to know,
Right.
What do you want me to do next? Do you want me to get in contact with you? How do you want me to get in contact with you? The call to action and the messaging is so important. And if you can't get it right on one website, There's no way you're going to get it right on 4 websites.
It will turn it into a calendar. You say, hey, help me kind of analyze what I'm saying here, break it down into calendar, into output, and for me. Now, what I realized was that sometimes a lot of people still don't understand how to prompt AI. So then I met with him on New Year's Eve for our in-person session. So we had a virtual mentoring and then our in-person sort of deep dive. And we were kind of reviewing some of the things that he was doing. And it turned into where he just kind of had that back and forth conversation with AI instead of like brain dumping and prompting. So this leads me into AI prompting. And because when we started reviewing a lot of the things that were going into the AI, and they were very simple, very basic. And they're like 1 or 2 sentences. And the results were not anywhere near what you would like them to be, or he was dissatisfied with the results. And we got into a little in depth about, well, here's how you have to prompt better. And first you have to tell it how you want it to act. What are your main focuses? So like act like a CFO or act like a CEO or act like a marketing expert or act like an email copy expert in XYZ industry who focuses on your ideal client, right? With maximum outreach. Then give it as much detail as you can about what it is that you're trying to create. So in our example, right? How do we develop a 12 campaign email to achieve this outcome that is going to then deep dive into every 3 or 4 emails about a deep CTA and kind of dive into it more. When I had that conversation with him and we did better prompting in his scenario, he got the results he was looking for. And so it just reminded me that not a lot of people, like you may be using AI still today and using it like your Google search bar and just typing in 1 or 2 sentences and that's it. And so if that's you, like you can do so much better. You can totally use like a whisper flow, which I've mentioned in the past, which we'll get into before, but just to talk and then it'll turn it into text and drops it into the field. So, I mean, what have you seen for yourself? Like what you've
I'm
done or
giggling.
what you've advised people?
Well, see, I'm giggling because I found myself repeating myself so often with this last year. So I went out and built a course called Mastering Practical AI Prompting course.
Love it.
Now, I just dropped the link in to you on a private chat there, so you can drop it up on the screen if anyone wants to do it. It's a free course. We've got it currently open for free, and it's 11 frameworks that I've put together. And what I recommend is take 11 days to work your way through the course. You'll only need 10 minutes a day to do the course. It's not a very time-consuming course. The way I've designed this is very, very simple. Spend 10 minutes a day. We'll explain what the framework is. We'll give you practical scenarios. We'll give you a worksheet you can download and reference. Then the next day or later that day, depending on what time of the day you're doing it, go and put that framework into practice and start using it. The next day, you'll learn a new framework. Once you've got to the point of, I think the way I've done this is 9 frameworks in total that you'll learn. The 10th framework is learning to use a combination of frameworks, which is absolutely key for success because using a single framework is not always going to get you the results you want. Sometimes combining the frameworks will get you the results you want. And then we go into talking about when is the right time to use a custom GPT. And we've talked about custom GPTs in the past. And a custom GPT is basically when you have a repetitive task which has a very similar set of instructions or parameters that you want to use. So that's what the 11th technique that we teach is in there. Now, if you want to learn how to do some practical prompting, not just here's prompt engineering and here's the top 100 prompts you should be using to get these results. These are real, actual, practical prompts that I've put together based on doing this and training clients. And these are what I use every day. And I'll give you an example of one of my favorite frameworks. And that is when I start using the judgmental framework. So what I'm referring to there is when you ask ChatGPT something or any of these platforms, they're generally going to give you vague responses, or they're going to give you vague praise, telling you that you've done a good job. If you ask it, like, is this a good email that I've written? Or did I write a nice email? It's going to come back and probably give you a pat on the back, which is going to give you a small feeling of satisfaction, but it's probably not accurate. So what I do is I tell it, you are a English professor and you are reviewing this email as an English professor, and I want you to tell me if the client who I'm sending this to is going to appreciate XYZ, and get it to go through and critique my work for me.
Right.
And I love doing that because what that does is that gives me someone else checking my work. Or my favorite one, does this make me sound, I use another word, but like a terrible person? And or do I sound too aggressive? Right? And the reality is, those simple little questions that I can ask, I get real results from. Now, people don't realize that you can just do that sort of thing and have those sort of conversations. And it all comes down to, when I talk about prompting, it's just conversation. And I love the fact that more people like yourself are getting involved with the dictation platform, because I tell you, I use dictation on my phone and it is horrible on Google Chat, Messenger, all these other platforms. I use an Android phone. It's absolutely horrible. Siri's not much better. Yet, for some reason, ChatGPT dictation and Gemini dictation is pretty good. When you enable those dictation, and you can sit there for 5-10 minutes and dump. So one of the things that, like, I've talked to you about is, we'll have a meeting with a client, and then I'll just sit there and dictate back into ChatGPT and ask it to prepare my notes. And it'll output all my notes to me. That way, I can give it all my thoughts from the meeting, but then add extra thoughts that I had after the meeting, which then puts it all into a nice thought process, into a thought flow. Then I can give it more instructions and tell it, okay, now I want you to give me an email that I can send this accompany as a download PDF to the client.
Ultimately,
blah, 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 blah.
there's literally no limit to, like, I mean, let me take that back. There's some limit to the prompt, right, detail that you can give it. But in terms of our context, you cannot give it too much information, and the more the merrier, because in the end, it's just a computer platform, right, that's using what you give it to develop some sort of answer based on the information it's been trained on. And so you have to give it the most. If you just say, hey, tell me how I can write an email campaign, right, or write me an email campaign for a bookkeeper, it's just going to be bland, generic, not going to be, in depth. So the more information that you can give it, the more information that you can tell it about you, whether it's supporting documents or, talk about who you are, what you've done, the better the results you're going to get from AI. And so it's still, I guess, surprising to me that, because I'm not even perfect with it, but as I'm learning, as I'm continuing to kind of do new things, it's still surprising to me how there's still the vast majority of the population that, one, either hasn't tried it, or two, if they are trying it, it's very basic still. And they're not anywhere near to the level that you or I are. And there's people way ahead of us as well, and it's, so I'm not claiming to be an AI expert, but definitely, in terms of the room that you're in, you're the expert if you know the most about, that piece of information. So it's interesting. But so when I talked to a lot of people, it just was something that just front of mind for me, because he was like, man, wow, that's a game changer. He's like, I never thought you could do it. He just thought you just had to ask it like simple questions, and that was how you prompted it. For example, it came up with he was trying to make a calendar for 2026 for their marketing, the events that they wanted to do, et cetera, and like deadlines that led up to that. And so it gave a pretty basic, bland journey. And he was just like, well, help me put it into a calendar. And it gave a very basic calendar in terms of like one per month, even though things were supposed to happen multiple times throughout a month, multiple times throughout the year. So then I said, well, hit the microphone. And then I spoke to it. and gave it a big long paragraph detail of what needs to happen when things needed to happen, what kind of preceded so if there was a requirement that preceded an outcome, you let them know, like, hey, this needs to happen 7 days before the outcome, otherwise if it doesn't happen, the outcome's not going to happen. And so we built all of those things then into the calendar, and now we're able to kind of review this with the executive team and say, hey, here's the goal, here's everything that we want to do for 2026, let's make it happen.
Yeah, and
So
then from
for you-
there, like I use it a lot for like improving ideas, creating SOPs,
Right.
giving it the foundation, and then letting it go and create better structure around my ideas and concepts. And I think it's all about learning how to use it in a way that works for you, but also, what's the right way of putting this? It's also, it's a tool that can be utilized in so many different ways. It's like I've seen people using it in so many different ways, and everybody's got a slightly different technique on using it, which is why we didn't go down the path of just giving people 1,000 prompts and say, here's the best 1,000 prompts to use. We thought, let's just teach people how to fish. Let's teach people some basic frameworks that can get them the results they want and get them thinking in the way of the best way to communicate with this platform.